Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to continue the same chapter which we had started in our previous class, Grandfather and the Python. We are going to learn from page number 71. I am going to start from very first paragraph. Please listen it and try to understand. Here I begin. I hope he isn't too hungry, I said. The narrator here believes that when the grandfather says that the python might have left the place because it was too hungry, but what does the narrator believe? He believes, I hope he isn't too hungry, but the narrator believes he was not that much hungry. We left the window open, said grandfather, looking embarrassed. Grandfather looked very embarrassed and he thought and told to everybody, the python is gone, just because that we had left the window open. A careful search was made of the house, the kitchen, the garden, the stable and the poultry bed, but the python couldn't be found anywhere. Each and every corner, every place, all around the house, whichever it was possible for them to go around and search, everywhere the python was searched. It was searched in the kitchen, it was searched in the garden, stable, poultry sheds, everywhere, but they were not able to find the snake. He will be away by now, said grandfather reassuringly. Finally, grandfather says, by this much of the time, the snake might have gone. He will be away now. He is now out of the sight. He can't be found anymore. This is what grandfather mean. I certainly hope so, said grandmother, who was halfway between anxiety and relief. The most scared person in the house, who was very terrified, scared, nervous because of the presence of the snake, was who? No other than grandmother. By listening this, she was the person who was found to be most in halfway between anxiety and relief. She felt really great relief by knowing the fact that the snake was no more nearby. Aunt Mabel arrived next day of a 3-week visit, and for a couple of days grandfather and I were a little apprehensive in case the python made a sudden reappearance. So in this way, as we had already come to know who was going to, in our previous class we had learned that who was supposed to come and visit to their place? Aunt Mabel. She was supposed to come to their place for a visit. So in this way, grandfather as well as the narrator himself looked very apprehensive in case python made a sudden appearance, in case the python would come back again. This is what both of them hoped, that maybe at the moment the python is not nearby, it is vanished, it is disappeared, but they were very hopeful. Both the grandson as well as the grandfather were very hopeful that very soon that the python would make a appearance once more in their surroundings. But on the third day, when he didn't show up, we felt confident that he had gone for good. But for the third day also, when the python was not seen, this made them quite clear and confident that the python might have vanished, that it might have gone away. And then, towards evening, we were startled by a scream from the garden. Seconds later, Aunt Mabel came flying up the veranda steps, looking as though she had seen a ghost. In this way, after a day, it was quite normal which was going on. Suddenly, a kind of scream was heard coming from the sides of the garden, from the garden sides. And in a very few seconds later, it was found that who was the person who was making the screaming sound? It was no other than Aunt Mabel. She was screaming and running towards to the house as if like flying like a bird. She was coming up the veranda steps. She raced, and she was also found that she was in such a state, she was in such a scared state that as if she might have seen a ghost in the garden. In the guava tree, she gasped. She was so much at that time terrified. She was gasping, and she says, in that guava tree, I was searching for a guava when I saw it staring at me. She explains to the family members. She had visited the garden in order to search few guavas. And in the meantime, when she was searching and liking to have a guava, in the meantime she happens to see that object which was there sitting on the guava tree, and it was staring towards to Aunt Mabel. The look in its eyes as though it would devour me. She explains that the object was looking towards to her in such a manner as if it was going to eat her away. That is what she explains at that time. Calm down, my dear, urged grandmother, sprinkling her with eau de cologne. In this way, grandmother tries to console her, tries to make her cool and calm. No need to worry, no need to get afraid, we are here with you. Calm down and tell us what you saw. Instead, please you tell us that what did you see in that guava tree? What it was really? What did you see that it was there sitting in the guava tree? This is what grandmother asks to Aunt Mabel. A snake, sobbed Aunt Mabel. I saw a snake there, sitting there in the guava tree. This is how she explained. A great boa constrictor, it must have been 20 feet long. A great boa constrictor, a variety of snake, that is what usually which are found in the various places, which is found a large kind of variety of snake which is generally found in the American variety of snake, it is found in the territories of America. Such type of variety of snake it was looking like. This is how Aunt Mabel explains that it was very dangerous in look, it was very terrifying. So that's what it made her to feel so afraid. A snake, sobbed Aunt Mabel, a great boa constrictor, it must have been 20 feet long, in the guava tree. Its eyes were terrible. Okay, it looked at me in such a queer way. How did the snake look towards to Aunt Mabel? It looked as if in a very strange manner, in a very unusual manner that the snake was looking towards to Aunt Mabel. That is what Aunt Mabel explains here about the snake which she might have come across to meet there in the guava tree. This is what Aunt Mabel said. My grandparents looked significantly at each other, and grandfather said, I will go out and kill it, and sheepishly taking hold of an umbrella sailed out into the garden. In this way, when Aunt Mabel looked so terrified, very much in a situation where she was very scared, both of the grandfather as well as grandmother, they started to look at each other. And then finally grandfather says, I will go and find it out and kill it. Don't worry, I am here with you. I am right now going and finding it out and going to kill it too. And he rushes away from there and goes towards to the place where the snake was told to be sitting over there, and he goes sheepishly taking hold of an umbrella, sailed out. Sailed out here it means left the place in a determined manner, as if really he was going to kill the snake. This is what it means. Into the garden. But when he reached the guava tree, the python had disappeared. In the meantime, when grandfather happens to reach the place where it was told, that guava tree where it was supposed to be found to be there as it was told by Aunt Mabel, but when grandfather reaches there, he finds that the python was not there. It was vanished, it was disappeared once more. Aunt Mabel must have frightened it away, I said. What does the grandson say? The grandson, who is the speaker to here, narrator to, says that might be Aunt Mabel has frightened the snake. That is why it has disappeared. It is not found here. Oh, said grandfather, we mustn't speak of your aunt in that way. But his eyes were alive with laughter. And what does grandfather instruct the child? You should not say it like that about Aunt Mabel. In real terms, he was also feeling quite filled with laughter when he was saying so. We must not speak of our aunt in that way. But his eyes were alive with laughter. But he really meant it. He was also feeling as if to make a laughter. After this incident, the python began to make a series of appearances, often in the most unexpectedly places. So from that time onwards, the python, sometimes it appeared, sometimes it vanished, sometimes it was found in some such a places which was not supposed to be found, unexpected places that sometimes the snake was to be found. It started to give its appearance every alternative or sometimes in different occasions that the snake started to be seen around the house. Aunt Mabel had another fit of hysterics. Hysterics, here it means an expression of extreme fear and excitement in uncontrolled tears and laughter. This type of expression, this type of feeling that it was shown by Aunt Mabel at that moment, in those times whenever that she was coming across with the snake to meet with. So here we come to know about how the grandfather was now going to get that snake back once again. This is what we are going to learn, children, in the coming paragraphs. So please listen it carefully and try to understand that how grandfather is going to make it to get it back, the snake. Next morning, I saw the python curled up on the dressing table. It was a very strange morning. The very next morning, it was found to be quite very unusual incident that it happened on that very day, that it was found, the python was found to be curled up on the dressing table, gazing at his reflection in the mirror. What was the python doing at that moment? The python was found that it was looking towards to its own image in that mirror, that is dressing table, its own reflection that it was gazing towards in that mirror of that dressing table. I went for grandfather, but by the time we returned, the python had moved elsewhere. Instantly, the grandson happens to rush towards to grandfather to inform him that the python is sitting there, over there in the dressing table, on the dressing table. But when they come back, they find that once again the python was moved away from here elsewhere. A little later, he was seen in the garden again. After some time, once again the python was found there in the garden. Then he was back on the dressing table, admiring himself in the mirror. Once again the python was back in the dressing table, and what it was trying to do over there? It was trying to, as if to admire itself, its own beauty, its own appearance, that it was trying to admire by sitting right in front of the mirror of that dressing table. Then he was back on the dressing table, admiring himself in the mirror. Evidently, he had become enamored. Here, enamored means fallen in love. It looked as if the snake, the python, was fallen in love with itself, its own image. That is how it was looking from a distance when anyone was found to be look that particular sight or that vision, that scene, how to that snake was reacting at that moment in front of the mirror of that dressing table. This is what it was quite understood. So next morning, I saw the python curled up on the dressing table, gazing at its reflection in the mirror. I went for grandfather, but by the time we returned, the python had moved elsewhere. A little later, he was seen in the garden again. Then he was back on the dressing table, admiring himself in the mirror. Evidently, he had become enamored of his own reflection. Grandfather observed that perhaps the attention he was receiving from everyone had made him a little conceited. But at that moment, grandfather was able to realize and understand that because of the presence of all the family members nearby it and looking towards to it, paying attention towards to it, might have made the snake to feel it, to realize it that there were so many people surrounding him. This is what grandfather was able to understand. The snake might have little conceited. Everyone had made him a little conceited to realize and sense that he was, the snake was surrounded by the people around him, the members of that family, the members of the house, the people had gathered and surrounded it. That is what the snake was able to sense at that moment. Who realized it? The grandfather was able to realize it. He is trying to look better for Aunt Mabel, I said. the narrator here, the grandson, says that maybe the snake is trying to look better for whom? For Aunt Mabel in a joking manner. I said a remark that I instantly regretted, but grandmother overheard it. So actually the grandson had meant it, but who did not like to overhear it and tried to overhear it? Grandmother tried to overhear it and brought the flat of her broad hand down on my head in this way, a kind of reaction, a kind of broad hand it was brought towards to whose head? The narrator's, that is the grandson's head, at that moment when the situation was not found so much suitable in such situation to remark anybody like Aunt Mabel, which grandmother felt it was quite awkward. That is why she has done such type of action towards to the narrator. So this is what we come to learn here, children, in this page number 71 of this chapter. I hope you might have been following quite well and trying to understand too. The chapter is quite interesting. It is a kind of adventure that it is going on here with that python, the wild animal, isn't it? Everybody is here really feeling very excited. They have all looked very eager about that creature, which generally people do they have their thoughts that the pythons, the snake, enormous snakes are very dangerous. But here the family, except grandmother and Aunt Mabel, both the grandfather as well as the grandson, they are very fond of it and they are very much liking it and enjoying the presence of the python in their house. Whereas grandmother and Aunt Mabel, they are not that much fond of it. They are quite scared with it, isn't it? This is what we come to learn in this particular page in this chapter. So we are going to stop for today here. In our next class, we will be doing the next page and we will be concluding the chapter 2. Then it will be followed by various questions and answers, exercise works. Then we will do notes and all grammar exercises too. So keep on learning well, children. So every time, every chapter, after the completion of my chapters, sometimes poems even, I am providing you the various question answers and notes, exercises. Sometimes I am giving you homework as well. I don't know whether you are performing it or not. Whenever the situation will come to normal and we will be able to communicate with you much more in better way, I will be asking the various works, the copies where you might have performed the homeworks well, that will be also asked. So keep on doing, be very honest and sincere in your works and make your notes all up to date, so that whenever we will ask for it, you will be able to produce it for the evaluation and checking of your notebooks. So we are going to stop here only for today. Rest of the things we will be doing in our next class, right? Okay, goodbye.